father and mother moved to Durham. Originally, my father enrolled in the law school at what is now North Carolina Central University. Back then it was North Carolina College. So that's what brought the family to Durham to start with. Because ultimately he applied for admission to UNC's law school at Chapel Hill and was among the group of the first African-American students to be admitted to law school at Chapel Hill in a lawsuit known as McKissick versus Carmichael, which integrated the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. He made Durham his home after law school, the successful completion of law school, and established a law practice here, and was from very early days very interested in civil rights. Of course, that lawsuit was a landmark lawsuit in its day, time, and era, and of course it was as a result of his interest in wanting to see that African Americans had equal access to education and to make sure that the major schools in the state were desegregated that led him to become extraordinarily involved in civil rights here in Durham and throughout the state of North Carolina.
I forgot who handed me my diploma.
Did they have them back then?
The Dillard Teer family dates back here in Durham County back to 1888 when Daddy's father and his mother moved to Birch Avenue in Durham. Unfortunately, in 1906 he had an industrial accident and lost his right hand.
I'm lost as sure as I was found.
My father had the good luck of being a yard man for Mr. Ben Duke. He told him, he says, I'm going to New York next week and I will bring you back an artificial hand. Duke was as good as his word. He came back the next week and he couldn't find the hand, but he found a hook. My father thought that was the greatest thing in the world because he had full use of his arm, and the hook just made it easier for him.
By 1909 he had decided to go into the grading business and rented 3 mule teams from his father and started the Nello Teer Company. Later in the 1900s into the 1920s he started doing work at Duke University. While at Duke University, dug the foundation for the Duke Chapel and the Wallace Wade Stadium. And as time went on, the company grew.
Well, my father worked on the Seaboard Railroad and had an accident and lost his arm. So he lived in Raleigh and had an opportunity to buy a 4th interest in the Coca-Cola business in Durham, which had been closed. He became a very good friend of Mr. Teer, who also lost his arm in a construction accident. So they became custom. He bought Coca-Cola, we used Teer.
The first large bottling plant that my grandfather built was on Main Street, and I too remember stories about Dad talking about going to the plant as a little boy when his dad was operating the plant and building ramps out of crates to jump his bike in the top floor. And it was one of the traditional Coke plants that has the picture glass window in the front and the block glass around it, where the bottling operation is open to the public. So I've heard many people through the years say that they remember walking by that plant and seeing the bottles go by the window. So it was a fixture in Durham. It was a destination, I think.
Had a memory that was beyond compare, and he knew hundreds and hundreds of people, and he knew just about everybody that worked for him by name.
Our family has always been interested in and thought about economic development in our region. And as we grew and as our family's company grew, we built a lot of the infrastructure, roads, highways, dams, airfields. We did a lot of work, as I said earlier, at Duke University. In the late 60s, we started working in the Research Triangle Park, and over the next 30 years, we built over 3 million square feet of space.
The other thing that some folks might not realize is that when Teer Company was doing a lot of the work at Duke University and a lot of the excavating and the tree stumps that my grandfather, Papa Teer, saw. The original plan was that all these stumps were going to this ravine, and eventually that was supposed to just become a lake. Well, my grandfather was like, this, in the middle of campus, by the way, and he's like, this needs to be something different. It needs to be this beautiful area where people can enjoy, and today it's known as the Duke Gardens, which, you know, who would have known that? I didn't until very recently.
My parents were extraordinarily significant here in Durham. First, they were able to facilitate the desegregation of our public school system.
Well, my mother's actually name is on the lawsuit to sue Durham Public Schools for Jocelyn and Andre, but Jocelyn in particular.
Secondly, they opened up doors of opportunity for those that were preschool age through daycare centers. Daycare centers provide opportunities before there was a Head Start.
So she leaves a legacy in terms of preschool. I rented somebody the other day, y'all had your mother for a preschool teacher, oh my goodness, and she had to be 65 years old, so a number of people still remember Mrs. McKissick and her outreach to the community.
But most importantly, they help improve and increase the self-esteem of many of those that were there throughout our community, and they help mobilize those on our college campuses to get politically driven, politically motivated, and to put themselves out in the forefront, to be the guinea pigs in the civil rights movement, to not be afraid to be arrested, to not be afraid to stand up for courage and conviction, to stand up for principle, but most importantly, to understand that they could change a community and they could help change the fiber of a society.
I grew up as a boy and went to the YMCA camp. Then later on, the YMCA was down on Main Street. That's when Teer and I found out that the old building had never had the mortgage paid off, and we needed a new Y building. We raised $550,000, the campaign, and my father-in-law with American Tobacco Company gave the big initial gift of $55,000 cash that got us started. Irwin Mills gave the land. Floyd Fletcher was interested and also a partner, and one that we worked with radio and television. He was the campaign manager. Teer ran the camp, developed the camp program, and I was chairman of the building committee.
Northgate was started because he could not build a coke plant on that site. They couldn't get the zoning for an industrial facility, so they built it on Hillsborough Road, which is where it is today. But had the coke plant been built there, we would have never had Northgate Shopping Center and now Northgate Mall. So there's a real strong tie between Coke and Northgate.
My grandfather instilled work ethic in everybody, but I think the thing he instilled most was perseverance. For somebody to achieve what he did with his handicap, it shows that, you know, if you work hard and do like you should, you can succeed, and that was a very good lesson for everybody to learn.
I love Durham, and we're so privileged to have the great weather, and the funny thing is we do all vacation in the same place too. So we live here and then we vacation in the same place, and then we all come back here. But really, it's about you live in a great place, but then it really is home is where your family is.
If you had a problem, turn it into an opportunity. My favorite term we picked up is turn lemons into lemonade. He lost his arm and said it was the luckiest thing ever happened to him.
To those, much is given, much is expected. And we saw that growing up, and it was just expected of us to be community servants and to follow their lead. She's been a real hard act to follow because she has served on so many boards, from the Durham Arts Council, Museum of Life and Science, the hospital, Durham Regional Hospital, just the Renaissance group, you name it, she was on it.
She was always deeply involved in the hospital. She was elected to the North Carolina Department of Transportation and served on that for 6 years.
Some of the things I think I'm most proudest of are things that are related to community involvement. Being chair of the site-based committee at Githens Middle School for many years, on what was a city-wide site-based committee when that existed, and some of the other projects working with the Durham Business Professional Chain, and now my particular favorite project is the Polly Murray Project.
My parents were committed to public service, to helping those who are less fortunate. I have, in my life, tried to do much of the same. I think if I were to look at the legacy that they have passed on to me, it's the responsibility to return to your community, to make your community better, to make it the quality of life for all better. And that's what I think we have all tried to do in our own special ways. I see that baton being passed on to our next generation, and even to the grandkids that I have, in terms of those things that seem to be of interest to them.
On the tombstone of my grandparents, it does say, "Lived our lives with courage and conviction." And I think that really sums it all up.